The Primrose Meadow subdivision featured wide avenues with carefully spaced maple trees, each street bending smoothly to form winding loops around groomed lawns. At dusk, porch lights shined in neat rows and neighbors often shared smiles while walking, pets, or jogging. In marketing brochures, Primrose Meadow looked like the definition of the American suburban ideal. Driving through the main gate, one quickly noticed the perfect flower beds and the uniform style of two-story homes. Variations on a theme of tasteful neutrals regulated by a watchful homeowners association. Homeowner association. Signs near each entrance reminded residents of posted speed limits, assigned trash days, and the strict compliance standards for yard maintenance. For some, these rules were a small price to pay for living in a safe, organized environment. For others, the homeowner association's constant watchfulness was suffocating. Yet one of the most powerful figures in Primrose Meadow was not the homeowner association president nor the committee chairs, but rather a middle-aged woman who rarely accepted any leadership above her own. Her real name was Evelyn Markham, yet the entire subdivision, and even some local officials referred to her behind closed doors as Karen. She seemed to embody that cliché, overbearing, opinionated, and laser-focused on controlling every detail around her. Karen, a self-appointed compliance watchdog, had lived in Primrose Meadow for 6 years. During that time, she'd clashed with numerous neighbors, finding them for mailboxes a shade off the approved color, or complaining about a 30-minute delay in bringing in their trash bins. Despite not holding the homeowner association presidency, she commanded significant influence. By scouring the bylaw text, collecting evidence of minor infractions, and threatening new residents with threats of further action, many found it easier to avoid direct conflict and simply appease her. Still, no one could have guessed the extremes she might reach when her sense of control collided with the genuine emergency. Karen's next act would shock even those who had endured her worst intrusions, prompting an unprecedented response from both local officials and the entire neighborhood. Ultimately, it would illuminate how a single destructive gesture can unite a community more powerfully than any official regulation. As summer rolled into Primrose Meadow, the atmosphere intensified in more ways than one. Record high temperatures scorched the region, straining air conditioners and causing brush near the edges of the subdivision to grow dry. The homeowner association sent out emails reminding residents to keep yards neat, to remove dead plant material, and to follow local burn restrictions. Most obeyed, aware that dryness and heat spelled prime fire hazard. Karen, of course, took these notices as a mandate to double down. She walked the streets early each morning, scribbling notes on a clipboard. If she noticed a neighbor's lawn with slightly brown patches or untrimmed shrubs, she pounded on their door to deliver warnings. Those who tried to reason with her left the conversation upset, as she rarely listened, preferring to quote the bylaw code word for word. Yet even her alertness failed to quell a subtle undercurrent of risk that accompanied the scorching weather. Over a dozen minor brush fires had sparked across the county in recent weeks, mostly contained quickly by local fire departments. Residents grew anxious about the possibility of a real blaze. One spark in the tall grass by the suburban fences, and the entire block might see flames coming. People prayed that no such crisis would strike Primrose Meadow. Meanwhile, Karen bragged that her yard was the only truly well-maintained property free of risk. She disliked any intrusion on her landscaping or garden, which featured rows of carefully pruned rose bushes leading to a small ornamental pond. Her house sat near a main intersection where an important fire hydrant was located. A wide patch of lawn behind her house provided direct access for emergency vehicles to the hydrant line that connected to a trunk water pipe. Karen often argued that the dusty trucks used that area to maneuver or refill water, sometimes flattening the grass. If an emergency arose, she vowed she would not let them ruin her beloved hydrangeas. No one took her threat seriously. Who would hamper a fire department in a real emergency? But the tension lingered, an unspoken worry that Karen valued her garden's perfection of any communal sense of safety. And then came the day when that tension boiled over into a bold, destructive act. The day of the crisis dawned oppressively hot, the sun already blazing by 8 a.m. Cica's buzzed incessantly and shimmering heat rose off the pavement. Most residents stayed indoors, blinds drawn to keep cool. If anyone ventured out, it was to check the mail or quickly water a patch of lawn. Around midday, an electrical short near the southwestern edge of the subdivision triggered a small blaze in a patch of overgrown brush within minutes. The dried foliage ignited, sending plumes of smoke floating over the rooftops. Panicked neighbors dialed 911. Sirens howled in the distance as the county fire trucks rumbled toward Primrose Meadow. The local station had prepared for exactly this scenario. The first responders arrived, quickly positioning their bright red engines near the hydrant behind Karen's property. They intended to run a supply hose from the hydrant to the pumper truck, ensuring a steady flow of water to extinguish the brush fire. Firefighters hopped out, unspooling thick lines of hose while the engine's diesel roar intensified. Karen, inside her air-conditioned haven, saw the trucks rolling near her cherished garden. Heart pounding with anger, she marched outside. The firefighters hardly noticed her. At first, they were in the midst of hooking couplings to the hydrant, ready to charge the line with high-pressure water. But Karen's angry voice soon cut through the commotion. "What do you think you're doing on my lawn?" she screeched. A young firefighter, shocked, turned to see Karen storming forward, arms flailing. "You can't just run over my grass like this. Do you have any idea how expensive these roses are?" The team leader, Captain Willis, tried to keep calm. "Ma'am, we have an active brush fire. We need access to this hydrant. It's important we connect quickly." Karen folded her arms. "Then do it from the street. You're crushing my plants." Captain Willis exchanged a look with one of his crew. "Ma'am, the hydrant line is behind your house. We have to hook up here. Please stand aside so we can do our job." Fuming, Karen stepped back, but continued shouting complaints about the truck's wheels leaving impressions in her lawn. The firefighters ignored her rant, focusing on controlling the blaze overhead. Thickening smoke told them they had no time to spare. Finally, the engine roared and water began surging through the wide hose, heading toward the nozzle team's fighting flames near the southwestern fence. Karen's face twisted in fury, but with bystanders watching, she dared not act openly. Instead, she withdrew indoors, muttering that she would not let them destroy her property. Little did the firefighters know, Karen was about to carry out a plan more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As the brush fire crackled, the first wave of water from the hydrant made progress. Flames flickered, and the firefighters advanced their lines. Smoke still billowed, but the threat of spreading to nearby homes seemed contained. Residents further away from the site relaxed somewhat, trusting the professionals to handle the blaze. Karen, however, watched it. Standing behind her curtain window, she glared at the large supply hose lying across her yard, leading from the hydrant to the pumper truck. Water pulsed through it, bending the grass where it lay. She frowned at the ruts from the truck's tires near her. Prized hydrangeas, the idea that a public service would dare cross her property line, albeit to use a legally mandated easement, enraged her. In a burst of irrational rage, she formed a plan. If she could cut the supply line, they might have to move the truck or be forced to redirect it away from her garden. She told herself it was teaching them a lesson about respecting private property. Her single-minded focus on that petty grudge blinded her to the monumental danger in depriving firefighters of water. She searched through her garage, retrieving a pair of strong shears, typically used for pruning thick branches. Clutching them, Karen looked outside. Timing her move, she waited until the firefighters around the hydrant had run off to the front lines. Leaving the supply hose unguarded, senses humming with intensity, she snuck out a side door. Stooping behind a hedge for cover, Karen approached the thick, water-filled line. It vibrated with the pressure streaming through it. The roar of the pumper engine covered her footsteps with surprising ease. She positioned the shears near a weak point. As soon as she squeezed, the blade bit into the rubber. Water began spraying in a wild spurt. Alarmed, Karen jerked back, but her cut had succeeded. The supply line spewed a messy torrent. In seconds, the line pressure dropped at the nozzle teams. The firefighters, stunned, signaled that their water flow was dropping. One of them dashed back toward the pumper to see what was wrong. Karen, meanwhile, panicked at the water gushing from the sliced hose drenching part of her yard. She hid behind a corner of her house, heart pounding. She realized too late that she had done more damage than intended, but rather than help or confess, she fled indoors. Letting the men in uniform scramble to contain the problem, Captain Willis was near the front lines when he heard frantic shouts over the radio. Supply line compromised. Pressure dropping. He cursed, spun around, and rushed back to the truck. There, he found his team struggling to clamp a massive gash in the thick hose. Water sprayed out, saturating the lawn, forming a muddy pool. The entire line was rendered useless. The pumper's gauge read dangerously low pressure, shut down the hydrant. The captain ordered. One firefighter leapt to the hydrant valve, spinning it closed. The monstrous spray reduced to a trickle, but now they had no active water source for the front lines. Swap to the secondary spool, the captain barked. Another firefighter scrambled to fetch a spare hose from the engine, but that meant precious minutes lost. The fire threatened to gain ground. From across the yard, stunned onlookers saw water pooling in Karen's lawn. Some neighbors emerged from their homes to watch. Confusion etched on their faces. They had no idea who or what caused the damage. For a moment, the smell of smoke grew. If the flames advanced before the firefighters restored a water supply, the southwestern fence might catch, and from there the nearest homes were only a few yards away amid the rush. One firefighter examined the slice on the severed line. "This looks cut," he remarked seriously, running his gloved finger along the clean gash like someone used a blade. Captain Willis's eyes widened. "You sure it's not a rupture from pressure?" The younger man shook his head. "No way, this is intentional." Anger and disbelief clashed in the captain's mind. Who would sabotage a fire hose in a live emergency? He glanced around the yard, noting footprints in the wet grass. A fleeting suspicion crossed his mind as he remembered the furious homeowner earlier. But for now, they had no time to investigate. The priority was re-establishing water flow. Working carefully, the crew replaced the hose section, hooking up a fresh line to the hydrant within minutes. Water roared back into the pumper and the front lines resumed fighting the blaze. The brush fire, though it flared briefly, was contained again. The crisis subsided. Captain Willis radioed for additional backup to watch for hotspots. Meanwhile, another team member captured photos of the damaged hose, planning to report it to higher authorities. From her window, Karen watched this drama unfold, a sickening mix of victory and dread twisting in her stomach. Her sabotage had indeed forced the truck to move slightly, but now, the yard was torn up worse than before, and her action had nearly caused a raging inferno. The consequences of that moment would soon spread far beyond a few ruts in the grass. Eventually, the brush fire was extinguished. Smoke lingered, swirling in the hot afternoon air. The fire trucks remained on scene for a while, ensuring no restart. Neighbors ventured from their homes, relieved that the flames hadn't spread. Some snapped pictures of the charred brush. Others offered the tired firefighters bottles of water. Captain Willis, troubled by the sabotage, approached the hydrant area. He discovered a few of Karen's neighbors standing around looking upset. Word had spread that the hose had been slashed intentionally. One neighbor, an older gentleman named Mr. Albright, muttered, "This is insane. Who would do such a thing? They could have burned the whole block." The captain exhaled. "We suspect the homeowner here might have interfered. She was complaining about us using her yard, but we don't have direct proof yet." He gazed at Karen's house. The windows were curtained, showing no sign of life. That alone aroused suspicion. Local police soon arrived to document the incident. They took statements from firefighters and neighbors who'd seen Karen's earlier confrontation. The torn hose was taken as evidence, and photos of footprints near the slash were captured. Captain Willis provided details how Karen had scolded them just before the sabotage, though no one witnessed her physically cut the line. The police concluded they'd likely pay Karen a visit. Across the street, sweaty families began to discuss the day's near disaster. Some blamed Karen's name, recalling her repeated complaints about trucks near her hydrangeas. Others searched their phone galleries to see if they had by chance filmed anything, hoping to find a stray clip capturing the sabotage. So far, no luck. The midday heat and swirling chaos meant no one had documented that exact moment. By early evening, the crisis scene wound down. The firefighters loaded up their gear. The trucks rumbled away. A hush fell over the block, save for whispered conversations about the day's events. Meanwhile, behind locked doors, Karen walked her living room, her heart hammered with anxiety as she realized the authorities might question her, but she refused to believe they could prove anything. She justified her act, telling herself she was forced to do it to protect her prized garden from government overreach. Over the next few days, the sabotage became the topic of Primrose Meadow. The Homeowner Association's online message board lit up with threads titled "Fire Hose Sliced, an Act of Vandalism at Yesterday's Fire." Residents vented disbelief and anger. Some demanded that the culprit be prosecuted, citing the risk to everyone's homes. Others guessed that Karen was behind it, given her public hostility, though her name was not yet officially confirmed. For the first time in memory, neighbors who previously tolerated Karen's meddling found themselves furious. Many now viewed her not just as an annoying busybody, but as someone who endangered the entire community for her personal vendetta. The local police assured the Homeowner Association they were investigating, though they lacked a clear witness or camera footage. If Karen had indeed done it, she'd been smart enough to avoid direct observation. Karen, feeling the heat, laid low. She posted no new complaints on the Homeowner Association board and refrained from her usual morning patrols. When a police officer knocked on her door one afternoon, she pretended ignorance, claiming she'd been inside the whole time and had no idea who damaged the hose. She insisted the firefighters overran her property against her wishes, but she never admitted sabotage. Despite her denials, suspicion stuck among the residents. A collective sense of rage grew. If the authorities couldn't pin charges, how else could they ensure she never threatened their safety again? Some proposed a recall petition to remove Karen from the Homeowner Association entirely, but others pointed out she was not an elected official, just a vocal resident who took upon herself to enforce rules. The real question was how to ensure the fire department's readiness next time. No one wanted a repeat of that day's near disaster. Then an idea emerged. The best way to undermine Karen's sabotage might be to improve the hydrant system so thoroughly that no single slice of hose could delay the response again. If they could raise money for a modern solution that was faster to connect, more flexible, and more resistant to tampering, perhaps the entire neighborhood would be safer. This notion, initially raised by a father of two named Ethan Parrish, began to spread among neighbors looking for a constructive path forward. Ethan Parrish, an electrical engineer and father of two young kids, had followed news of advanced fire safety technology. He remembered reading about quick connect hydrant systems and specialized hoses that improved water pressure, reduced setup time, and were more durable against punctures. If we cannot rely on the old standard hoses to remain secure, especially when a sabotage might strike, why not upgrade? He suggested. At a small gathering of neighbors, they discussed the idea on the usual approach to a sabotage case might be purely punitive, hoping the police or the courts punish the culprit. But if Karen never confessed and no charges stuck, that left the block exposed. A new hydrant or advanced hooking mechanism could protect them from future interference. Some folks worried about the cost. Was not hydrant equipment a city responsibility? Possibly, but the city had a budget that might not prioritize a single neighborhood's advanced hoses, and time was of the essence. Ethan presented his plan further. What if we raise private funds from the entire subdivision, something like a community donation drive, and gift the fire department a top-of-the-line quick connect system for our hydrant? We would ask them to install it here, so in an emergency, they can lock in their hoses more safely. We might also buy a stash of secure backup lines the station can keep on the engine. That way, if someone tries to slice one line, we have spares. Some neighbors complained that paying out of pocket for a municipal service was not fair, but others argued it was no different than raising funds for a local school's new playground or a public library's reading program. The city might not allocate immediate funds to fix one hydrant system, but if the community gifted the equipment, the fire department would be happy to accept. It would help not just Primrose Meadow, but any area the truck served. Momentum built for the idea. The Homeowner Association Board, shocked by the sabotage, promised to help coordinate. Emails circulated soliciting donations, big or small. Families pitched in whatever they could. $20, $50, sometimes more. A few well-off residents contributed hundreds of dollars, eager to protect themselves from future risk. Meanwhile, Ethan researched specific product lines, checking them with the captain's recommendations. The project started to feel real. Still, a small portion of the neighborhood complained, thinking the city should handle it. But once they heard from the fire department that such upgrades typically took months or years for budget approval, they realized a direct donation might speed up matters. In the background, Karen's name floated in every conversation as the reason for this rush. Each new donation, ironically, was motivated by her sabotage. Karen, hearing about the fundraiser, mocked she considered it a waste of money. From her perspective, the entire disaster was the fire department's fault for trespassing on private property. She believed upgrading hoses would only encourage them to disrupt her garden more often. If she overheard neighbors discussing the donation drive, she interjected with rude remarks. So now, we're paying to let them stomp over our lawns? Unbelievable. But for once, few neighbors bothered to respond her. The sabotage had crossed a line. People who had once quietly endured her Homeowner Association meddling now turned cold. Some refused to greet her, not wanting to start a confrontation. Others openly told her to keep away from community events. She sensed her social influence was at an all-time low, overshadowed by the universal condemnation of her rumored act. Nevertheless, the donation drive continued strongly. When Karen realized it had broad support, she tried a new tactic. She claimed to the Homeowner Association that installing a quick connect system might alter the historic aesthetic of the hydrant or break noise restrictions with bigger water surges. She threatened to file official complaints if the plan proceeded, but the Homeowner Association Board, guided by popular sentiment and the overshadowing emergency concerns, brushed aside her arguments. They posted a statement that residents' safety is most important. The board fully endorses the hydrant improvement project. Stunned, Karen found herself powerless. She pinned angry letters to the local newspaper, shouting about government overreach and neighbors throwing money at frivolous gadgets. The paper published a single short letter, but the reaction in the comments painted her as reckless, so she withdrew again, fuming in private. Meanwhile, the collection soared above $10,000 while on its way to meeting the target cost for the new system and additional hoses. As the fundraiser approached its goal, Captain Willis visited Primrose Meadow to meet with the Homeowner Association Board and Ethan. The donations had surpassed the minimum needed, so they discussed the final steps: ordering the specialized quick connect couplers, scheduling the city water department to handle installation, and storing extra secure hoses at the local fire station. Captain Willis expressed deep appreciation. In my 20 years as a firefighter, I have never seen a neighborhood come together like this after an act of sabotage. We cannot thank you enough. This technology might save minutes in an emergency, and that can be the difference between a minor fire and a disaster. Ethan smiled. We just want to make sure no one can threaten the response like that again. We are grateful for your service and want you to have the best tools. A date was set for an informal celebration ceremony. Once the new system arrived, the department planned to bring a truck to show how quickly they could connect now, hopefully without needing to drive over Karen's prize garden. The city water department agreed to run new lines that allowed the truck to hook from the street side more easily, reducing yard damage. The plan ironically addressed Karen's original complaint, though not in the harmful way she pursued. Word spread across the subdivision that the final unveiling would take place in 2 weeks. Residents looked forward to it, seeing it as a symbol of unity. They invited local news outlets, hoping positive coverage might overshadow the ugly sabotage story. No one formally disinvited Karen, but few expected her to appear, or if she did, most hoped she would keep her distance. Meanwhile, The police investigation remained open, though progress was slow. The detective had no direct proof tying Karen to the slash, just strong supporting evidence. The DA hesitated to pursue charges without an eyewitness or video, but the social verdict was already in. Nearly everyone believed Karen was guilty, leaving her excluded and humiliated. A week later, delivery truck pulled up to the local fire station. Several large crates were unloaded, each labeled with the logo of a high-quality firefighting equipment manufacturer. Inside were gleaming new hoses reinforced with advanced materials less prone to tearing or slashing. They also contained the specialized couplers for the hydrant upgrade, each crafted from strong, tamper-resistant metals. Captain Willis oversaw the unboxing with a grin. The city water department scheduled the crew to install the couplers the following Tuesday. Meanwhile, the station tested the hoses, admiring their improved flow capacity. The lines had quick latch connectors that snapped into place with a twist, taking half the time of older models to secure. The station's maintenance officer grinned, impressed. If every hydrant had these, we would save precious seconds on each call. The success stirred energy in Primrose Meadow as well on the community's online forum. Residents posted updates. New hoses are in. We are making local news next week. At the unveiling, some longtime neighbors felt relief that the sabotage crisis was turning into a net positive. Others were shocked by how quickly the community had raised the money. Karen scrolled through these posts with a mounting sense of loneliness. Though no one named her specifically in the messages, she recognized the hidden meaning. Her attempts to shut down the hydrant had led to a better system that outshined her beloved garden. She expressed her frustration to an acquaintance who half-heartedly sympathized, but the acquaintance quickly changed the subject, not wanting to seem allied with the potential criminal. Karen realized no one was truly in her support anymore. Tuesday dawned crisp and clear, a welcome break from the previous heatwave. The city water department arrived in the morning. Met by the fire crew and several homeowner association members, they closed off the intersection for safety, redirecting traffic. Over the next few hours, workers removed the old hydrant coupling, replacing it with the sleek quick connect mechanism. Residents watched from sidewalks, taking pictures on their phones. By midday, the job was done. The new hydrant shined with a fresh coat of paint, sporting the upgraded coupler that locked into place in mere seconds. Next to it, a short path of strengthened asphalt replaced the grass patch near Karen's property line. This small walkway allowed the truck to park curbside, avoiding the need to run over lawns in the presence of city officials. Captain Willis performed a test hookup, snapping a new hose into place with a crisp click. Applause erupted from the assembled crowd. Local news cameras rolled, capturing Captain Willis praising the community's kindness. Because of your donation, Primrose Meadow now has one of the most advanced hydrant setups in the county, he said. We appreciate your willingness to protect not only your own homes, but the entire region we serve. Thank you. Then Ethan stepped forward, representing the neighborhood. When we faced an act of vandalism that nearly cost us dearly, we chose not to sink into blame, but to rise and create a safer solution. This hydrant belongs to everyone who chipped in. We hope it stands as a reminder that good can emerge from even the worst moments. Cheers and camera flashes punctuated his words. Several firefighters offered symbolic challenge coins to community leaders, signifying thanks. The local station's anchor person concluded a short interview, promising the segment would air that evening on the 600 p.m. news. Across the street, onlookers beamed with pride. Meanwhile, tucked behind her curtains, Karen glared at the celebratory scene. She spotted cameras near the hydrant, neighbors hugging or shaking hands, and a large fire truck glowing in the midday sun. Instead of the truck's wheels on her grass, there was a new walkway bending around her flower bed. Despite that improvement, she felt no relief, only resentment. That her sabotage had backfired so dramatically that evening. Local TV news led with the story: community unites after fire hose sabotage, donates advanced hydrant equipment. The footage showed the new coupler in action, smiling firefighters and short sound bites from Ethan and Captain Willis. The anchor described how a mysterious attacker had cut the hose during a brush fire, prompting the neighborhood to respond with kindness rather than fear. They aired the final segment with a line that deeply touched. While the individual behind the sabotage remains unidentified, the people of Primrose Meadow have chosen to meet destruction with creativity, ensuring no sabotage can threaten them again. The feature ended with a shot of the hydrant and the new hose system. As neighbors watched at home, many felt renewed pride in their community. They posted celebratory messages on social media, praising the firefighters and the determined fundraiser. Some even joked that the sabotaging culprit must be boiling. Faced with the unstoppable momentum of positivity, Karen's reaction to the news broadcast was anything but happy. The segment cast the saboteur as an anonymous villain, dwarfed by the heroic response. She recognized that the entire city now saw this unknown culprit as a disgrace. She worried that if new evidence surfaced tying her to the crime, the public outcry would be intense. Yet she refused to accept the blame, telling herself the incident was exaggerated. At the next homeowner association meeting, typically held in a modest community center hall, Karen attempted to appear, but found the atmosphere chilly. Attendees barely acknowledged her presence. Discussions revolved around final budget tallies for the Hydra project. The board planned a thank you barbecue for the firefighters. Karen sat in stony silence while neighbors excitedly planned the event. No one sought her input. The sense of condemnation was nearly absolute. Even residents who once admired her stance on strict yard standards were appalled by any possibility she'd sabotage a fire hose. Over the days that followed, she withdrew further from public life, seldom emerging from her house except for necessary errands. Each glance from a neighbor felt accusatory. In the weeks that followed, the new hydrant system stood ready at the southwestern corner, a silent sentry guaranteeing swift water access. Neighbors joked that it was Karen-proof, a dark humor at her expense. Meanwhile, the local police concluded that, lacking eyewitnesses or a direct confession, they could not file criminal charges. The detective recommended the file remain open in case new evidence appeared, though it seemed unlikely. Karen's reputation was permanently damaged. She became a social outcast, avoided at block parties, denied her usual seat of power in the homeowner association circles. Even the earlier generation of residents, who used to fear her compliance checks, no longer gave her respect. The community had collectively found a new sense of strength in banding together. Some nights Karen lay awake, mind churning with regret and bitterness. The raw truth was that her sabotage had accomplished nothing except leading to an improvement that made her yard more accessible to emergency vehicles. She had lost the high ground in arguments about property rights, buried by the horrifying possibility that houses could have burned. Yet stubborn pride prevented her from apologizing or admitting wrongdoing. Primrose Meadow, for its part, flourished. Freed from Karen's dominating presence, many neighbors discovered a friendlier vibe at community events. The firefighters occasionally visited on weekends, hosting small safety demonstrations for children. The spark of neighborly friendship, ignited by adversity, now burned bright. People felt proud of their strength. During a routine brush clearing near the site of the original fire, city workers found scraps of tattered gardening gloves and a strong shear blade near the hydrant line. Further evidence, albeit circumstantial, of sabotage. They handed them over to the detective, who nodded grimly. Unless a forensic link to Karen's property or fingerprints turned up, the clue might not lead to charges, but it reinforced the general agreement that sabotage had indeed occurred, not a random accident. One evening months later, as cooler autumn air settled in, Ethan Parrish returned from a jog to find Karen waiting nervously outside his house. Startled, he asked if she needed something. Karen fidgeted, glancing around as though worried about being seen. Then in a quiet, awkward voice, she spoke. "I hear you're the one who led that hydrant fundraiser," she began. Ethan nodded. She wrung her hands. "Well, I just wanted to say maybe it was a good idea. Sturdier hoses, less chance the truck has to cross lawns. My garden hasn't been damaged since they did that walkway." Ethan blinked. Was this Karen's attempt at an olive branch? She continued, "I still believe they had no right to tear up my yard that day. But, well, I suppose the new system is better for everyone. She trailed off, not quite offering a full apology, but acknowledging the outcome. Ethan considered how to respond. Part of him wanted to lash out, to demand a confession or an apology for risking lives, but he saw the haunted look in her eyes, the lonely isolation that had become her reality. He simply said, "We did what we had to for the safety of the neighborhood. I'm glad you see some value in it." Karen nodded briefly. "Yes. Good night." She turned and hurried away. Ethan watched her retreat, a swirl of emotions in his chest. He was not sure if she would ever fully realize the seriousness of her sabotage or regret it sincerely, but at least she recognized she could not stop the tide of community improvement. That weekend, the homeowner association hosted a barbecue in honor of the local fire department. The event took place in the main park near the clubhouse with red, white, and blue streamers and tables filled with potluck dishes. Families arrived carrying homemade signs reading "Thank you, Firefighters," and children wore plastic firefighter hats. The mood was joyful, overshadowing the painful memory of sabotage. Captain Willis and several crew members arrived in a shiny engine, parking it for kids to climb aboard and explore. The new, improved hoses were on display. Parents and kids admired the specialized quick-latch couplings. Firefighters demonstrated how quickly they could connect to the hydrant, and the crowd applauded. Some children even tested the lever, under supervision, laughing at the notion of commanding water flow. During the speeches, the homeowner association president gave a short address about the donation drive success. Ethan offered a few words praising the department's quick response. The day of the fire and celebrating the neighborhood's unity, Captain Willis thanked them again, saying, "We serve many communities, but we will never forget how Primrose Meadow turned a problem into a leap forward for everyone's safety. You set a standard. We hope others follow." People in the crowd smiled, exchanging proud nods. They ate grilled burgers, hot dogs, and homemade desserts, forging deeper bonds. In quiet corners, some still whispered about Karen's rumored guilt, but for the day's celebration, no bad feelings overshadowed the gratitude. At one point, Karen stood at the edge of the park as though debating whether to approach. She wore dark sunglasses, arms crossed. A few times she glanced at the engine or the buffet tables, but never joined. When a neighbor waved politely, she half shrugged. Eventually, she turned and left, leaving behind a gathering that thrived without her brand of intrusion. The story of Primrose Meadow's sabotage incident and following generosity continued to ripple. Another suburban development in the region, hearing of the Quick Connect system's benefits, started a similar fundraiser. Their local station reported that advanced couplers cut their response times by up to 30 seconds in training drills. The county council began discussions on whether to budget more widespread upgrades across multiple hydrants. Citing the success in Primrose Meadow as a model, local media periodically checked back on the subdivision, highlighting how neighbors had formed volunteer committees to further improve safety, like organizing a Firewise landscaping program, removing dry brush, and ensuring clear pathways for emergency vehicles. The fiasco that once threatened to cause division had ironically created a sense of purpose and mutual responsibility. Karen's name rarely surfaced in these public stories, replaced by praise for the community's generous spirit. In private, some folks joked we should thank Karen for giving us the push to upgrade. Others rolled their eyes, arguing the sabotage was too dangerous to joke about. Nevertheless, the agreement was that Primrose Meadow had grown stronger as a result, and so while the rest of the county viewed the subdivision as a shining example of citizen effort, Karen watched from the sidelines. The more coverage the upgraded hydrant received, the more invisible she felt. Her role in the fiasco never fully exposed to the legal system, but widely known among neighbors. Her attempts to regain any standing in the homeowner association were met with respectful but firm rebuffs. Months stretched into a year. The redesigned area around Karen's property, where the hydrant walkway now extended, remained meticulously kept, partly by city workers maintaining the emergency access. Her hydrangeas bloomed after a mild winter, ironically thriving beside the new asphalt path. Fire trucks rarely needed to drive onto the lawn anymore thanks to the updated layout. In a twisted sense, the sabotage had forced a change that satisfied her original complaint of truck damage. Yet the emotional damage to Karen's reputation stayed. Neighbors recalled the terror of that day. Some parents still awakened in the night imagining how close the brush fire had been to their children's bedrooms, how sabotage could have ended in tragedy. They never confronted Karen directly about it. Why give her the attention? Instead, they quietly left out her from community life. Karen turned her energies inward, rarely volunteering for homeowner association committees. She continued obsessing on lawn aesthetics, but her public scoldings dropped. Significantly, the once dreaded knock of Karen faded into an occasional complaint letter posted to the homeowner association, typically about trivial matters. The board often set those letters aside, dealing with them last, if at all. Ethan and other key donors stayed in touch with the fire department, occasionally emailing Captain Willis to see if any new technology needed funding. The station politely declined, grateful for the existing gear, but they promised to inform Primrose Meadow if a future upgrade could further bolster public safety. The relationship forged by adversity grew into mutual trust. Meanwhile, the local detective quietly closed the sabotage case, marking it an active suspect identified, but not enough evidence. Should Karen ever slip up and admit guilt, the file might reopen, but life seldom wrapped up so tidily. Everyone recognized that justice in the formal sense might never land on Karen. Instead, her punishment was living with the realization that she had nearly burned her neighbors' homes, and that her neighbors despised her for it. Sometime later, Captain Willis announced his retirement after 3 decades in service. Primrose Meadow organized a small goodbye gathering at the station to honor his years on the force. A few local communities pitched in for a plaque, and there was talk of naming a portion of the station's lounge after him. Ethan and a handful of other residents attended the ceremony, presenting a photo album containing pictures from the fundraiser and the hydrant installation. On the front page in gold script was written, "Thank you for saving us and letting us save ourselves." In his retirement speech, Captain Willis briefly recalled the most unusual sabotage he'd ever encountered, a filtered mention of the Primrose Meadow incident. He spoke not to shame anyone but to highlight how the community's response symbolized the best of humanity, turning adversity into a chance to lift. Even after stepping away, he said he would remember that moment with appreciation. That evening, as the sun set, some of the older kids in the neighborhood, who were small children at the time of the brush fire, lit sparklers in the street as a farewell gesture. The new fire captain, younger but just as dedicated, promised them that the Quick Connect hydrant would remain a permanent fixture, maintained and tested regularly. The roads of Primrose Meadow glowed with a warm sense of continuity, connecting the past turmoil with a confident future. Time has a way of smoothing rough edges. In Primrose Meadow, lawns stayed. Green gardens thrived and neighbors found more reasons to gather. Barbecues, holiday lights contests, volunteer trash cleanups. Near the brush, the homeowner association eased some of its overly strict rules, focusing on safety and neighborly cooperation. Rather than petty violations, children rode bikes along the safe sidewalks, and families welcomed new residents with open arms. Karen remained in her house, quieter than before. Some neighbors occasionally spotted her pruning hedges or picking up the paper. Rarely did she meet their eyes. She might offer a brief nod, but gone were the days of brandishing bylaw pages. Rumors whispered that she might sell and move away eventually, but no sign in her yard indicated such a step. Perhaps, she realized, she'd never. Ironically, her sabotage had forced improvements that would protect her own property as well. The city extended the Hydrant Quick Connect concept in other fire-prone areas, honoring Primrose Meadow for spearheading the initiative. Over time, new families arrived, never knowing the drama that once exploded here. All they saw was a well-kept suburb with an advanced hydrant system and a strong sense of community. But the older residents remembered. They told the story at block parties or late-night bonfires. How the day's brush fire nearly became a disaster when a sabotage cut off the water. how that terrible act led them to unify, raising funds for the best firefighting equipment money could buy, how the block recovered with the powerful spirit of resilience, overshadowing any single person's attempt at control. And so, the final legacy of Karen's sabotage was not the damage it caused, but the unstoppable wave of goodwill it sparked. The new hydrant and hoses remained a tangible symbol that even the darkest impulses can be defeated by collective bravery, generosity, and cooperation. In the end, Primrose Meadow stood as a lasting reminder. One malicious cut might endanger a community, but a united community can heal and grow stronger in response, making sure that no garden-obsessed busybody can threaten public safety again.